Greetings everyone, I'm Genie and I'll go about what's working on expeditions and what's the best archetype to be going for a 7 win. I'll talk first about the best champions and then the worst ones, and then I'm going for the archetype and cards that you shouldn't skip depending on what you're going for. So let's start with the champions. Currently on expeditions, the current best in my opinion is Nautilus, by far, and then Lee Sin can also be very strong depending on what type of deck you're running. When he levels up, he's just nuts. He can take down a lot of different enemies and still do Nexus damage, which is great. Sejuani, oh boy, this card is actually very good as well. It's not very difficult to build around her, and when she levels up, you can pretty much win the game if she's not taken down. And considering that in expeditions, people don't tend to have a lot of removal on hand for these type of card, then she's great. V also gets in the same category as Sejuani. She's pretty damn good. She brings a lot of high value with little effort, because it's pretty easy to get her to 10 attack. It's not that difficult, it's not that hard to play 8 cards for example, and then at turn 5 or 6 you're going to have a 10-5, like she's very good. Going back to cards that we already had and are pretty damn decent as well, Israel with the right control deck, that is very easy to build, to be honest with you. Once you get the first Israel, then a lot of control cards will come, and it's not gonna be that difficult to build. And then if you combine him with Bilgewater cards, it's gonna be very insane. He can level up super fast, so therefore he can be pretty consistent. Hecarim is still very good as well. Like, he is one of those cards that you drop him and then he brings value, and it's that simple. Like, of course he isn't as powerful as he once were, but still a very solid champion, one that I consider getting every time I see as well. Now let's get to those champions that I avoid nowadays. I avoid Swain because it's very hard to get value from him. I avoid Vlad because obvious reasons. He's not good. Even though he's my favorite, he's my favorite champion, he's not good. Twisted Fate, I think he's too easy to remove, and you know, even constructed, I think he's more of a card that you have on your toolbox more than a win condition. He isn't that strong. It's bad to rely on him. And Braum, like Braum, on these in this current meta where there's so many high attack cards, it's very hard to get him. I think it's not worth it. I think he will lose way too many games, so I don't consider getting him. You see, when you're talking about champions, you usually try to go for champions that can bring the most value on their own, because relying too much on combos often makes your deck useless. You know, it makes it less reliable because you're counting on having the best cards at the right time, so it's not bad. It's not good. As I said, it's a little bit different when it comes to Israel, because once you get him, a lot of cards come, a lot of control cards come, so it's pretty easy to level him up. It's pretty easy to make him work. I actually got a 7 win with him today, so he is very reliable still. Now, going for the best archetype, in my opinion, now on the current state of the game, is the Deep Sea Monsters, hands down. He's just too good of a deck when you can get him working, which usually with Nautilus, but still, it's the most consistent and easiest to pull off. So you should always try to go for that if it's a possibility. Just one thing to keep in mind though, when you go for Deep Sea Monsters, you should always pay attention to how many cards you have in your deck, so you don't burn out too fast, you know, start throwing cards everywhere and then all of a sudden you don't have a deck anymore. And don't forget that on the first games you have less cards than you will have, for example, on the 5th win, for example. So your first games, you really shouldn't go crazy on tossing your cards around, because it doesn't matter what you do, you will get to deep. because without much effort, because you have less cards, so getting to that 15 mark is pretty easy. One champion that you should pretty much never skip nowadays is Nautilus, because he is crazy. Because for several reasons, it's very easy to make him work, it's very easy to level him up, it's very easy to get those 15 cards. If you've picked Nautilus, you should try to get a lot of sea monsters, obviously, but mainly the 4 mana one, because he becomes a 7/7 for 0 mana once you leveled up Nautilus and you have him on board. And another sea monster that you should never ever, even if you don't have Nautilus, skip is the Devourer of Depths. Because he's great removal, and then later on he is even better. He can bring a huge swing on board. And even without being deep, even without being on those 15 mark, he's still fantastic. You should never skip him. Shipwrecker Hoarder is another one of those that, even if you don't have Nautilus, you should consider getting, because the effect that he brings is just too good to be passed on, in my opinion. I have won games already where I had a very bad hand, and then I played him like 2 or 3 turns after I got the effect that he gave to my deck, and then that swung the game completely because I flooded the board, and it was fantastic. Really, you should consider getting him. You should also try to get hired guns, because since you're in expedition, you don't have the luxury to pick the right removals that you want. She can be clutch in a lot of situations to remove, you know, that one card that needs to be removed. And she's very cheap as well, so yeah, it's a very solid 2-drop nowadays. And at last, the very best card in the game right now, in my opinion, seriously, it's just too good. Of course, that those are not champions, right? Is Pilfered Goods. Hopefully I didn't butcher the name. Seriously, it's just too good. It will probably be nerfed in the future, it's that good. And that's for several reasons. It costs too little, it's a burst spell, and by using it, you may get a key card that your opponent is expecting to get. So you not only gain a lot of value for the drawing mechanic, obviously, you're gonna have one more card in your hand to maneuver as you will. It will also disrupt your enemy's strategy, so it's just fantastic. You should always get him, in my opinion. It's not that hard to use. It's not that hard to get that plunder effect. Since it costs only 2 mana, eventually you will have 2 mana and hit your opponent. So I think that will wrap this video for today, guys. I don't want it to be very long. If I forgot anything or if you don't agree with me, leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe for more Legends of Runeterra videos that will come in the future. So thank you for watching, and see ya!